gorgeous. Today we're going to talk about something that will affect all of us. Yes. It's becoming a senior and standing up for your rights. Even though I have no idea what those rights are, but I suspect we're going to find out.
Maybe you get more rights as a senior.
I feel like you do, because I feel like you have the right to say no.
Lovely.
Like if someone says, hey, Dr. Amelia, would you mind doing this extra little job? Would you mind diagnosing this little rash I have in this very secret place? You can say, yeah, nah. Whereas, when you were younger, you might have gone, yeah, okay, I'll do it for you, But I don't know about you, but my experience of like the aged care kind of situation, I only have one experience of it, and that was my cousin who was in Bris Vegas, and it was like a brand new nursing home like facility, and it was like spanking new. Everything was shiny and bright.
How long ago was it?
This was only a year ago. Oh. And it had like, 3-story atrium with like trees in it and a jungle and a fountain and everything. Everyone was gorgeous. The staff were gorgeous. The rooms were gorgeous. They did all these gorgeous activities.
Was it a film set?
Oh, practically. I felt like I was in the Stepford Wives. But they had like, they had like bingo. They had like Twister. Well, they didn't really have Twister, but, they couldn't. But the best thing about it, right, was they had this cocktail bar on the 3rd floor.
Really?
With a terrace. Yeah. And I said to my cousin, if I were you, I'd be here getting off my rocker or my rocking chair every night, because that was the best thing about the place. Like,
Did they have a casino attached?
I think so.
Okay.
Only after hours, which was like 7 o'clock at night. But like they, but apart from that, I just found it a little bit depressing. That was just me. Okay. Despite all the beautiful things and the beautiful people, it just felt a bit sad. Like, all those old people together. I realise that's what it is. It's an aged care place. They're caring for older people, but I don't know. There's just something about it.
Well, that's really interesting, because I think a lot of people who are watching you right now or listening to you would go, I would hope for that when I'm 90.
Right.
I hope I'm going to be in the cocktail lounge.
Oh,
no.
Definitely, baby. But so do you have experience of like the aged care system and all of that?
Because I'm a doctor, so.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
I think your depression is understandable, and even if it's kind of beautiful people, it's still very intimidating. I think all of us probably are feeling very intimidated in the world today about what it's going to be like. How restricted are we going to be? Yeah. Are we going to be able to actually have a nice life, or is it going to be us talking to dull people at dull tables?
I've never played bingo. I've been to drag bingo.
Bingo's quite fun.
Okay, right. Legs 11, all that kind of thing.
It's all fun.
But the thing is, so in one of our episodes before, we had a guest called Margaret.
We did.
Fabulous name, Margaret.
Yes, it's a goodie.
She talked about what she discovered as she navigated the aged care system.
I remember. Yeah.
And it was such a nightmare. And I was like feeling quite
have a good time.
stressed
by
the episode, because it sounded so difficult, even though she was giving like fantastic hints to the audience, like what she had to go through, and it was unexpected. I think until you're actually there, you don't really think about what it's going to be like, and how to fill out all those forms and tick all those boxes. But but if only she had heard about our guest today.
Absolutely,
who is another fabulous Margaret.
She needed the other Margaret.
The fabulous Margaret Crothers of Seniors' Rights Service. Welcome to She Wasn't Born Yesterday, Margaret.
Thank you very much.
Is it exciting to be here? How are you feeling?
Definitely. I'm beside myself.
No, you're not, because you're sitting there opposite us.
I am. I'm beside
Just
myself.
answering all of our difficult questions. No, but we're really, really keen to find out, because, I hadn't heard of Seniors' Rights Service before.
And neither had I.
And I suspect, that a lot of people haven't heard of it. And if they had, they would find this whole process of, dealing with their senior relatives a whole lot easier.
Certainly. If I had $1 for every time I heard that, so I'd known about you, I would have retired years ago. But certainly it is, part of our role is to do exactly what you said, is to help people to understand. So, fire away. I'm here to help you get that information.
First of all,
I want to pick you up on one thing, though, which is you talked about that fear of going into residential aged care, and really a minority of people end up in residential aged care. Aged care, people when they think of aged care, they just think of nursing homes. It was what we used to call them. And a small minority end up in nursing homes, and they go there simply because it's needed. They need that 24/7 care. So instead of worrying about ending up in a nursing home, worry about getting services and help at home, which I will discuss with you later, of course.
Fantastic. So, I think this is such a good point.
That's a great point.
Let's actually underline this point. I think that is such good news for all of us, all of us, even 20-year-olds who think they don't need to worry about this. But how lovely, because Janet was just saying that she was quite depressed. But what you're saying is, actually, let's think about the depression later, because actually it's a very small number of people who are even going to end up there, end up on the terrace drinking their Mai Tai.
Nothing wrong with that, though.
But you'll be staying in your own home drinking your own cocktails. So,
A dirty martini. But so, Margaret, tell us actually what you do and what Seniors' Rights Service actually does.
Sure. I've been an advocate with Seniors' Rights Service for probably more years than I care to remember, getting close to 20 years. So I've seen a lot of change within the aged care system, and but certainly had a fairly large amount of experience when it comes to advocacy. And what I have to stress is that our advocacy is aged care advocacy. It's not just generalist advocacy. It has to be related to aged care.
Okay.
So, when people ring us up, they might be used to disability advocacy, and where people will actually, it's a more holistic approach, but we have to sort of limit ourselves to issues that are related to actual aged care issues and concerns and information. Okay. So we have to clarify that very early on, because, I had a lady ring me up once and said, "Oh, there's a tree down in my backyard. Can you send someone out?" I said, "I would love to, but actually that's not what we do."
No.
And we don't provide aged care services either. Our role as an advocacy service is to be on the side of the consumer, to be independent of the aged care providers and of the funders of aged care, and to support the older person or their families or representatives if needed. So
I think this is fantastic.
Because I was actually going to ask you, is it just, who qualifies? So is it just, people who are 65 plus, fabulous? Or is it their younger family members too who are sort of
helping,
getting advice on their behalf, perhaps?
It's a bit of both. And so basically, you have to be a recipient of aged care services to qualify for the advocacy program. But you don't have to be over 65. There are a number of younger people in aged care. They're working on not having younger people in residential aged care, but for many areas, especially regional and rural areas, an aged care home is the only place where some people with disabilities can get 24/7 care, and that is problematic in itself. When you've got a younger person in with older people, there's not that camaraderie and the connection there. But
bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo is the great uniter.
Those bingo nights can get a bit feisty when the younger people are there.
But if there's a problem with the bingo night, because it is an aged care service, just to drill down here, because it's an aged care service, even that young person with a disability can contact you.
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
so you just have to be a recipient of aged care services, and or the representative of someone who is receiving aged care services, because a lot of people, especially in residential care, have cognitive impairment of the various many degrees that there are impairments. So, and they can't speak for themselves, and so they have a legal representative or a family member who can contact us, and we will help them as well. So but basically our focus is the older person. So our client is the older person, or their representative.
Sure.
And so what are some of the things that you can do for people? Like, why would someone need your service?
Yeah, look, there's probably three main areas, and the first one is information. People just ring us up to check. We're naturally suspicious human beings, aren't we? And
well, some are more suspicious
yes, true.
than others.
And the aged care provider might tell them something and go, this is right. And the number of times you hear, it's a new rule, it's a new law or whatever, and they ring up to check, and sometimes there's not. Yes.
Right.
We provide information in that sort of scope, but also just information about aged care. You both said we didn't know a lot, and people aren't born with aged care knowledge and aged care system knowledge.
And it does seem to be changing.
Oh, definitely.
All the time.
Yeah. And so that's a really good point as well, keeping up to date with the changes, because there are large changes coming up.
Yes.
And I had a caller just the other day who was receiving home care services, and she said, how is it going to, the new in-home services, how are they going to impact me?
But the other thing is it must be a little bit different for everyone.
It is, yeah. And so that information is really important.
Yeah.
So people will ring us up about basic services, about how the home care system works, about how residential aged care fees are determined, and who pays what and when and why, etc. So there's lots and lots of information that we can provide, because we deal with it on a daily basis. So it's
your wheelhouse.
It's natural for us. Whereas if you're the first time, you're not sure which part of the research that you've read is relevant or up to date or even accurate.
Yes.
So that's information is a very important part of our work. And it's also unbiased. We're not trying to sell you a product.
No. Well, that's kind of relieving to know that. Yes, it is.
Yeah. And our independence is really important to us. We don't recommend aged care services. We won't tell you which providers are the best ones in our opinion, or who or what you should consult, because that then maintains our independence. Our independence is really, really important, but we are funded. We don't do it for free. And I get asked that question as well. Are you a volunteer? And I say, no, the advocacy services are funded by the department to provide advocacy for the recipients of care. And since the Royal Commission, the funding has actually increased, because the Royal Commission really valued the work that advocates do, and saw the need for it, and saw that we were doing well under the funding we had, but it was really important to increase the funding and increase our outreach.
So, Margaret, that's all really kind of new information to me, but I just wonder, I think I've never thought, this is funded by who? Is this actually funded by the government?
Yes.
We're getting government money for this.
We are.
Yay.
Isn't
So
that
I was going to say,
wonderful?
tell me more about that. Like, actually, that makes me happy beyond.
Well, the good thing too is that we'll benefit one day.
Yes.
Well, yes, absolutely, all of us.
So keep working hard, because it's going towards your own retirement.
Funding your own.
But it's our own money. It's our own taxes that are being spent to make sure that the elderly are protected. So in New South Wales, we basically, our service, Seniors' Rights Service, has the advocacy service, which is the major part of our funding, but we are also a community legal centre. So we provide free legal advice to older people. We're specifically funded to provide legal service to older people. And
once again, I think we should emphasise that free legal advice.
Yes. When we all know how expensive lawyers are.
Yeah. You have to meet the criteria, of course, for community legal services. Not everyone is eligible, but if you meet the criteria, then that service is available to you. And I have to emphasise that our advocacy is not only independent, and it's also free, and it's also confidential. And that's really important for people to understand, that if they ring us, we are obliged under all the usual confidentiality laws to ensure that their concerns or their questions don't...
So if you ring up and complain mightily about a certain service, like that service that's still coming into your home and providing their service, I'm going to say, we heard that you were belly aching. And I'm going to take it out on you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that is a really important point to make to older people, that we will not do anything unless they give us permission.
Yeah.
And so we are led by them. So they can, as you say, rant and rave and complain and whinge and everything go on. And we'll say, well, what do you want us to do about that? and they'll say, oh, nothing, I feel much better now, thank you very much, and hang up.
Thank you for listening to me.
And do you know, it's surprising the number of times that people do actually say, thank you for listening. It was so nice.
Right.
I understand now. You might have told them a few things. Look, you can do that, you can't have that, blah, blah. And they go, okay, I understand that now, but thanks for listening. It's so nice to have someone.
Do they say thank you for answering the phone?
Yes.
Because no one answers phones anymore?
Yes, they do. And that's an important part of our service. We aim to have a live person answering the phones as much as possible.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't pick up every call across Australia, but we do have that phone service that goes from 8 a.m. in the morning to 8 p.m. at night, and it's available on Saturdays. And I've discovered that on Saturdays that we're one of a few services that actually answer their phones on Saturdays.
What kind of legal things might people be encountering? Like,
Look, on our legal side, with aged care, we cover all aspects of aged care. They do a lot of advice about planning ahead and during guardianship, advice and information about power of attorney, and then your usual legal things like neighbourhood disputes, my neighbour's fence or something like that. They can give advice about what to do, etc., etc. They do a little bit of legal representation, but not a lot because we're not funded enough.
But my feeling there is, are you useful anyway that you could ring up to the friendly line and someone's going to say to you, look, we don't cover that, but the next place that will really help you is to call these people or contact these people.
And that's a really good point, is that if we can't answer, we don't say just, oh, we can't answer that, sorry, bang.
Yeah.
It's really important to us, especially the age of our clients, is that if we can't give you the right answer or we can't help you, we'll refer you to an organisation that we are pretty sure will be able to, and hopefully it'll be another free organisation, So that's right. But look, the legal is limited by costs, obviously, but certainly they're once again very valuable information, very valuable in providing a starting point. Where to go, what to do. Even if you've already appointed your powers of attorney and you say, I'm not happy with what my daughter's doing, how do I go about changing it? That's where our legal service can come in. And it's much broader than that, but I'm just giving a couple of quick examples.
That's really interesting because, I think sometimes there is a lot of actual disagreement between, like the kids who are...
No.
Right.
Who wouldn't disagrees?
So, do you ever get the case of where, the kids are calling you and saying, look, mum's, not playing ball and she's not, she's being difficult and she needs help. But
we get lots of those.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And when so the children are a problem, but they're not our clients, and that's really important. We are on the side of the older person at all times.
Okay.
So if a kid rings up and says, my dad's a problem, we go, well, that's sorry, we will talk to your dad about you being a problem or what he can do to deal with you. But more often than not, it's one family member saying, my sister's their guardian, but she's not doing all the right things and I'll make a much better guardian. We do not help families fight against each other.
Yes.
But if an older person rings up and says, look, my daughter is a guardian and I'm not happy with the decisions that she's making or she's interfering, she's not letting me have my say, which is really important, then we will help and advise the older person, but we do not get involved.
This is lovely.
And even with aged care issues and aged care advocacy, you know how families know best all the time, and your children are always telling you what's best for you.
Yep.
When the advocates work, they always make sure that they consult the older person if they've got the ability to talk to the advocate. So even if you've got a slight bit of dementia or memory loss, you still may know that you don't want cornflakes every morning for breakfast.
Yes.
You may not be able to manage your finances and manage your bank accounts, but you know what you want to do, when you want to get out of bed, how you want to spend your days, 3 games of bingo. And not just one. The decisions are yours. And so we do come across a lot of families who try and override the older person. And I suppose our raison d'etre is the rights of the older person. You have the right to have a say. You have the right to choice. You have a right to have someone speak on your behalf. Now, that can be a family member or it could be us.
Yeah.
So, this whole thing about rights, is that a thing that's like the Geneva Convention where, you actually,
we wish.
there are specified rights, or is it just a kind of general concept.
Yeah, no, they do exist at the moment. It's called the Charter of Aged Care Rights. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's a little few pages tucked at the back of the principles of the current Aged Care Act, and so we don't like that being a rights service. And so we have really pushed, and Older Persons Advocacy Network has pushed, and a lot of older people, a lot of advocacy services have pushed for the Charter of Rights to be included in the new Aged Care Act. And the new Aged Care Act is actually, the emphasis is on the older person and their rights. And it's no longer called the Charter, it's called the Statement of Rights, and that is now part of, or will be part of, the new Aged Care Act. So it's gone from being at the back pages to a very vital part.
That's good.
But it's probably not, we're hoping that it would be stronger, and the new Aged Care Act would be tough enough to be able to do much more, but at least it's in the actual act itself now.
It should be right at the front.
Yes, it should be the first 5
The
pages.
thing that encourages me about this, though, is that this is, and we haven't talked, I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet, like this area is growing, like the area of the older person is just ballooning because of all of those baby boomers that boomed. So I was going to say, it's a huge, exactly, of
And
course,
blooming.
everyone's still booming and blooming. So it's going to be a bigger and bigger and bigger and more important area. And those people do deserve to have rights and be listened to. And, all of this is so excellent.
Yes.
And the 20-year-olds are going to, they're going to win out in the end.
Yes. Well, the thing I like too about, the idea of like ageing at our generation or every generation is the sing-alongs. Because, I am a really big fan of electronic dance music. And I'm going to sing along to Dom Dollar and Fisher and a bit of Disclosure. But, what sort of music? I want some house in the home.
Maybe you're
some
going to
house in the home. That's what I want.
Well, exactly. Maybe people are going to be able to have their kind of music
Exactly.
just into their home or their
none of this Old Lang
aged
Syne
care
business
home.
or anything like that.
None of that.
What sort of music are you going to sing along to?
Well, actually, probably electronic dance music too would be my choice.
Love it.
Or Cold Chisel.
Cold Chisel, right? The cheese.
So that's a good segue into how the rights work, because the traditional image of the aged care home was, old movies playing in front of people sitting in tub chairs just looking, and World War II songs, those era, well, even World War I songs probably, and those people have passed on, the majority of them, and it's the baby boomers now that you've got to worry about, and that's one of the reasons I've been working so hard in this advocacy job, is because I want it very nice by the time I get there. But certainly the Charter of Rights is all about choice. It's all about having a say, and even one of the rights mentions risk, the right to take risks. So instead of putting people in cotton wool, if you want to jump out of a balloon, to allow the older person to live the life that they would really want to live, or the guardian to allow them to live the life that they would have lived. Previously the guardianship used to talk about making decisions on behalf of the older person. So it was the guardian making the decisions. Now it's supported decision making. That's the new buzzword. In other words,
because when people dement too, it's not like you suddenly go from being competent to being incompetent in a second. Like, it's a gradual thing. So there's lots of competency still present.
That brings me to another really good point about supported decision making. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you've lost the skills. The majority of times, or the knowledge, or the ability, and there's some very talented and very professional people who get placed in aged care or need to go. They don't get placed. You actually need to go into care. No one just puts you in there. They're in aged care and they have been very say successful accountants or something like that. And when they get their home care bills and it doesn't add up and they're really hard to read and they're going, if I ran this business, our business would have failed, what's going on here? They know what they're talking about and they feel dismissed when they challenge it. So it's really important that we do understand and respect what the older people were and what they continue to be. They're just in a different,
absolutely,
in a different setting. And so that's a good point about it.
That Australians are living like 30 years
Yes.
longer than we did a century ago.
Exactly.
30 years. I mean,
We
that's
need
a
to
lot.
think.
That's
We
a lot.
need to think about people
a
in
whole
their
new
90s.
area, isn't it?
There's going to be a huge number of people
Yeah,
in their
yeah,
90s
yeah.
who are actually still very
High
competent.
functioning.
Yes.
Yeah.
I learned a lesson once giving a talk, and I was talking about old people do this and old people do that. And this chap came up to me afterwards, and he stood up to his full height, and he was still shorter than
5
me.
foot.
And he said, "I'm 93, and I don't do any of that." And I had to say, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry." Yes. And so ever since then, I've said some old people do this, and some old people need that, because not all people will age and become frail.
You should have said, "You're an outlier.
But
You're just doing too well." Yeah.
But I think the reality is that a lot of people actually do not end up needing aged care and do not end up in nursing homes, as I said earlier. And so we've got to dispel that myth that everyone's going to, need help at home. But thankfully, there is help available for those who need it. And there's a whole different range of helps that are available. So there's some very basic help, up to high-level help that still keeps you in your own home.
Yes.
And that's what we've got to really emphasise, that nursing homes or residential aged care homes, you have to be assessed to go in them. You have to be assessed as needing 24/7 care. And a lot of people think, oh, my daughter's going to put me or my son's going to put me in care. And no, that doesn't happen that way. Your son and daughter don't have a say in it. It's the aged care assessors who determine whether you are eligible for
I also have a fantasy that also this is going to be so successful that actually young people, when they come out of school and go to uni or wherever, they choose to go, I want a career in aged care, like policy making, they actually want to get involved in it very young, because it's a rewarding, interesting career to have.
But not only that, it's probably one of the few areas where AI isn't going to take over anytime soon.
Oh, no, but
no one can do Margaret's job.
I think it's going to help. I think it's going to help.
We're going to have a Margaret bot.
But certainly, yeah, look, it's not just people lying in hospital beds, and there's lots of good things happening in aged care. And we need to emphasise that as well. There have been bad things, and everyone's working to correct that. But there's lots of really good care out there, And
actually, the word you used before, when you said they're really depressing, what I'm hearing is actually
it doesn't
the
have to be.
depression thing is really turning around.
Yes, I hope so, because that's good.
And that's where we come in, because we really encourage people to have a say and to complain. People don't like to use the word complain.
But why not?
We're Australian.
That's
that's
what
un-Australian.
un-Australian should be called. Ring us, have a good whinge, and
and then thank us for listening.
But we use the words concern. I often laugh about a chap, this was ages ago, who rang me, and he said, I'm being charged for haircuts. Are they allowed to charge me for haircuts? And I said to him, well, yeah, if you get your hair cut in the aged care home, well, then you have to pay for it. It's not part of the fees that you pay. And he went, oh, that's no good. And I said, why? And he said, I haven't got any hair.
And they're judging him.
Well, they are ripping you off.
I said,
that's a rights violation.
That's different,
right
I
there.
said to him. And I said, no, just go down and speak to the people in the office. It's obviously a mistake. And he went, oh, no, he didn't want to do that. He said the staff were really good there. He really liked it there. And he didn't want them to think he was a whinger. And so I said, well, I can ring up for you. And he went, oh, can you?
I'm going to whinge for you
on your behalf.
Which I did. And, and it wasn't a clerical error. It was all fixed up.
Interesting.
But I have to ask you, so if someone rings you and has, a few different problems, so what do you then do? Do you ring the people that are meant to be looking after them or that they're concerned with?
Yeah,
or
look,
how does it work?
That brings us back to what we actually do and how we do it, that you asked me 25 minutes ago. But yeah, basically we listen to the concerns. So we say, how can we help you? And they go, oh, and and then we go through, we sort of digest what they've told us and tweak out what are the issues and what aren't the issues. Because some people, they draw a breath and go, back in 1928, and you go, no, I'm going to get the full story here. And you listen to the full story and you go, well, those early things now, they've gone, but let's concentrate on what's happened recently. And so you tweak out the issues that, ones that can't be dealt with or impractical. I had a lady once who asked me, she wanted a staff member to sit beside her mother's bed all night because she was worried her mother might fall out of bed. And I was just able to say, look, sorry, they're not funded to do that. You could, with working with management, maybe pay for a private person to come in and sit beside your mother's bed. And she went, oh, no, that'd be too expensive. So we parked that one. But yeah, you work through all the issues and you go, now this is an issue and this is something can be done about that. We can't do anything about that one. We might be able to do something about that one. Then we throw it back to the older person. These are your options. What do you want to do about it? And we give them the option and the information to actually go and self-advocate, to actually go and sort it out for themselves. And often that's a really fulfilling thing for some older people.
Very empowering, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some people probably have never been empowered in their whole life long.
Exactly. And the advocates actually talk about it. That's some of their favourite work, when they've given someone the knowledge and the courage to go and sort out their own problems.
They know their rights, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you tell them it's their right and they go, oh, I didn't know that. So that's good. That's right. And the other one is you'll often get people and they say, yeah, look, I've tried that. And I had a call like this the other day. The woman said, I've been trying for a certain amount of time to get a refund because she had some work done or something like this, and she said she paid for the account, the tradesman, and she wasn't getting the refund. And so she said, and I said, well, have you spoken to X, Y, and Z? And she said, yes, I've done all that. And she said, I'm just exhausted. I can't be bothered doing, or I'm over it.
Yes.
So the next step is to say, well, we can do that for you.
Right.
But we have to get their permission to do it.
Sure. Right,
So we would never ring a provider or a care service without the permission of the older
Yes.
person, because it's very important, because they still own it. They own that whole issue and own that complaint. And some say, no, look, I'm glad you've explained it to me. It's all right. I won't do anything. And we have to let them be happy with that. But if they want us to, we will actually work on their behalf and make a phone call and work with the provider. That's our aim, is to work with the aged care provider to get a resolution. We don't come in with the big stick or the boots, heavy boots.
Yes, I'm just sort of thinking people potentially could feel quite scared of Margaret. And I'm thinking about it, like in the
Quite a
whole
scary-looking person.
Well, she's not actually. She's a stealth bomber, perhaps. I was going to say, people could end up kind of going, oh no, they're going to come in and kind of look at how we do everything and bust us for getting it wrong. But anyway, yes.
I have a hypothetical for you.
Yeah.
So what if there's a lady rings you, she's in an aged care home, and she says, I don't want to be here, I'm so upset, I just don't want to be here. What would you be able to say to her, for example?
Yeah, these are hard ones because probably quite a percentage of people in residential aged care feel that they've been misplaced. They're in. A number of times I've heard people say, I'm in here with a lot of people with dementia, and the person has a diagnosis of dementia themselves. And a lot of people go, my family put me in here. I didn't want to come in here.
Yeah.
But they don't realise it's not their family. The older person's been assessed as needing. Right. And usually it's because they're in danger at home. They can't look after themselves because of the dementia. They can't remember to turn the oven on and off, and they wander, or there's a whole lot of reasons why you need 24/7 care. But yeah, we get that question and it's very, very difficult. But the way you approach it is say, well, how do you think you're able to go home? Do you still have a home? Because a lot of people sell their homes to go into residential care.
Yes.
So is your home still available to you? Oh no, it was sold. Well, where are you going to go? And the next question you always ask is, do you have help organised at home? Is there someone who can help you? And they go, oh yeah, I've got a level 3 package. And you go, well, no, actually, when you moved into residential care, that stopped. So you don't have that package. And it could be a 6 to 18 month wait for a new package. So what are you going to do in the meantime? How are you going to care for yourself? Do you have someone who will care for you? And slowly but surely you get them to realise that it's the reason they're in, and you ask them why they're in residential care as well. What was it that triggered you going into care?
Yes.
And if they're able to remember and able to answer, they slowly come to the realisation that they're in residential care because for their own safety. Because the very first right on the Charter of Rights is the right to safe and quality care.
Yes.
So safety is very important for older people. And unfortunately, the more isolated and alone you are, the harder it is to stay at home.
Yes.
If you've got family or you're living with someone who
Yes.
Cohabits your partner or family members, then it is a lot easier to stay at home because you've got someone on hand. If you have a fall, or how you get older, you don't fall over, you have a fall.
What's with that?
Yeah, I don't know. So there's no one size fits all with care. It's down to individual needs and individual circumstances and the resources available for that person as well.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy one to take, and we do get people who call us constantly.
I was going to say it's very individualised too.
Margaret, you were talking about this Seniors' Rights Charter. How do people even find out what their rights are?
The Charter of Aged Care Rights is part of the Aged Care Act and its principles, etc. And it's a very important document for older people, especially recipients of care, to know about. And so that's part of the advocacy's role. When they go out into the community, they speak to older people receiving home care services, and they go into residential aged care homes and actually talk to the residents of the home, and if they can as well, talk to the staff about the rights that the older people have. And at the moment there's 14 in the list, and it starts out of the one I mentioned earlier, which is the right to safe and quality care, which is really, really important. And it works its way down. I've already mentioned choices and things like that, but it's also the right to information. So if you're in a residential aged care home or you're receiving a home care, you have the right to know about what's happening with your home care package, where the money's being spent. You have the right to information about your medical history and the medications that you're taking, and also the people that you are familiar with, your family, also have the right, if you want them to be informed about your medical conditions or the care that you're receiving. So we work down through that right to information, the right to choices. There's a beautiful one, the right to take risks, which I really like, because it's, if you really want to, and we do defend a lot of people that way, but that some people are told, oh no, you can't do that, and we go, well, actually, that's what they want to do, let them do it. And if they're making that informed choice themselves.
Absolutely. It might be on your bucket list to jump out of a plane or do something scary.
And probably the one that really impacts advocates as well is the number 11, which is the right to have an advocate to speak for you. Because as you age, you sometimes get tired. The advocate can be your own children, it can be your enduring power of attorney, it can be your guardian, or it can be the advocacy service. So advocates must be allowed into aged care homes or must be allowed to speak to recipients of home care. So it's really, really important that people know they have those rights and know they can exercise them, and they know that people can help them to defend those rights. And so that's part of our service, and every advocate and across the whole of the country must do a set amount of talks. So it's part of our KPIs. Every residential aged care we have to go into every year, plus there is a high percentage of the home care services we have to go in and talk to recipients of care. So
it's a lot of your work.
Yeah,
wow.
Because I suppose if people understand their rights, they understand that they can stick up for them as well, or they've got someone to stick up for them. So it's that important. Knowing your rights is very important.
Yeah, but I think having someone there to speak for you, because you might not even know like what to sort of ask or say, or what you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So
and some older people are the fear of retribution. And that's one of them, that you have the right to speak up without the fear of retribution. So that's really, really important.
Also, what are some of the kind of preventable things that people could know so that they, if they had more sort of awareness of understanding of them, what issues could they easily kind of avoid?
The first one is an impossible one, which is just don't get old or frail. You can get old, but don't get frail and have medical needs. But that's never going to be in your control. And to be honest, that's something we can't control. And that's a real warning from my point of view to family members. Never promise your peers or your family members that you will never put them in residential aged care, because you could get to the stage where you can no longer manage them. And you get a lot of partners who are like that. They'll go, I promised my wife or I promised my husband he would never go into a nursing home, as they are called. And and they get to the stage where they're bedridden. They're a two-person lift. They have to be showered. They have to be dressed.
Yes.
And an individual by themselves can't do it, or they try to do it and injure themselves and the older person. So it's a lose-lose. So never promise anyone that they will never end up in residential.
Actually, I was going to say,
Never say
people should be talking about this more. I
think
feel.
so,
I had a famous argument with my husband many years ago.
How old is he?
Because I have MS. So it occurred to me that I indeed may require such care, even quite young. And I said to him, when you do put me in for respite or permanently, just make sure there's yellow painted on the walls. Just promise me that, that's all. And the silly man said, no. I'm never going to put you in aged care or in this kind of care.
And I thought Margaret.
That yes, he should. I'm going to send him through to you because I was very irritated because that was the wrong answer. Yeah. People need to talk about it.
They do, and that's probably the point. Don't wait until the very last minute. The way you can prepare is to get your head around what needs to be done, and there are certain steps you can take beforehand. Get to understand the system, and it alludes back to what I said earlier about everyone thinks aged care is just residential aged care, but there are so many other services you can access before you actually get to residential aged care. Understand the steps you need to take, and understand where you need to go to go through the steps. And so
they are quite complicated. Like I'm going through this currently with my mother, who's 87, but I'm a doctor. But I'm confused. I'm so confused. So where do you think it's easiest for people to kind of get this information?
Good question.
Seniors' Rights Service?
Yes, come to Seniors' Rights Service.
I will be.
But if someone just wants to ring up and say, look, where do I start? They can get the information and the help. And the advocates have another piece of armoury, I suppose, that is very useful. We have what is called advocates as agents, and we have a special access to the My Aged Care portal. And we are able to, sometimes people will ring and you'll say, what package have you got or whatever, and they go, I'm not sure. We can, with their permission, we can actually look it up. And
that's so cool. You're like an Apple tech person and say, can I take control of your aged care service? And
we can help them we can sit with them on a three-way call when they, and this is very important for people by themselves, because you know what, or you may not, but as you get older, you do not admit your own frailties. And we say to people, and this is obvious and you've probably heard it before, talk about your worst day, not your best day, because that's when you need help at home. Think about your worst day, what could be your worst day, and that's when you need help at home. And then work towards understanding how it works. The new reforms are meant to be speeding the system up, but there's a long wait at the moment. And so it's really important that people understand that they get registered, maybe get their head around what's available. So when it becomes available, they're able to access it quickly. But then when you get to residential aged care, sometimes that happens really, really quickly. Someone has an episode, a medical episode, and straight away they can't come home from hospital because it's just... That's right. And so even residential aged care, you may not end up there, but get your head around. Even just filling in forms from Centrelink, your asset assessment form, that's important. Making sure that you're registered with My Aged Care, making sure that you've had an assessment. The assessments are a little bit tricky because sometimes you might be assessed as needing a very basic care because that's the level you were at when you had the initial assessment. But in 2 years' time, you may...
Things have changed.
And you have to be reassessed. So then you've got to wait for the reassessment, blah, blah. But just... It comes back to that information side of things, isn't it? Forewarned, understand what you need to do and work on it.
So it's never too early to be a senior.
No.
So we should start now.
And if you're a younger person with ageing parents, get your head around it as well, because you could end up being the person doing all that.
Like Margaret, like our friend Margaret.
Yes.
Like our other friend Margaret.
Not you, but the other friend Margaret.
Exactly.
Margaret, I would love to hear like a success story. So give us an example of, a really sort of heartwarming story of someone you've helped.
Yeah, no, look, this isn't one of mine, but I'll claim it. This is a story, it's quite a sad story, but it's also a good story. This is a younger person, probably late 70s, had a very difficult childhood, went into residential care and was very non-communicative with the fellow residents, with the staff, and in fact it was quite abusive with staff.
Right.
And fortunately she rang up to make a complaint about something that wasn't going on. I think it was the way the staff talked to her or looked at her sideways or something like that. And she developed a rapport with the advocate. And after a number of phone calls, it sort of, the advocate twigged that the lady hadn't had a very nice childhood and hadn't really learnt how to communicate with people. She lived in a remote,
Like a lifelong kind of thing.
She lived in an isolated area, had been isolated from people around her, hadn't really learnt to get on with people. And really, to put it quite sadly, is she hadn't really learnt to love anything or care for anything. So the advocate actually worked with the aged care home, who were really keen to, try and get this lady...
Do something.
Yeah. And they ended up working on getting her a pet. And so they ended up getting her a parrot, which seems a bit strange.
I believe they're amazing parrots. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, a therapy parrot.
and so the lady had to care for it, and the staff had to come in to take the tray out every so often, and she let the staff come in to take the soil tray away. And slowly but surely she started to talk to the staff, and she used to let the parrot out in her room during the day, so it wasn't in a cage all the time, because I don't like caged birds. But anyhow, the parrot became a catalyst. And then some of the other residents noticed that she had a parrot, so they'd stop at the door and chat to her about it.
Yeah. And chat to her or the parrot?
Both. I'm not too sure. There weren't many notes on what the parrot could say or do, but I'm sure
swear words
it had a few
like
words. Yeah, probably Cocky wants a cacker or something like that. But she ended up going outside as well, because she realised the parrot needed some fresh air. So the parrot would go back into its cage, and so the lady was sitting outside as well. So it wasn't a total success story. She still had times when she was cranky. And
it is quite interesting too, because it's quite novel. It's not just, and I like it because parrots live a very long time.
Yeah.
So this parrot probably outlived her, which means she didn't have to go through the grief of, little Fluffy dying, or, anyway, so I like that about it too.
And it would become part of the furniture at the aged care home, so everyone could benefit in the end.
Exactly.
So
And you could parrot-led therapy.
Set up a whole new thing with parrots' rights services.
Well, but there are lots of aged care homes that have animals. The staff will bring a well-trained animal in, and the residents love it. And where my dad was, there was a very fat cat that no one was allowed to feed, but everyone going,
yeah, sure.
There's a biscuit here and a bit there and everything. And they love this cat. But then on the same token, we've had people ring us up and say they want to get a cat, and I'm allergic to cats, and so I do not want one. So they have to be very careful, because you can't have someone who's allergic to cats.
You can go to the parrot aged care, or the cat aged care, or
the horse aged care.
The horse aged
Bring the
care.
horse through.
Yeah. And or they could have wings, the parrot wing, the cat wing, the horse wing.
Wings.
Yeah.
Nice. She's full of ideas.
That's a bird thing, though.
But even simple things like I was in one aged care home recently where this gentleman was given the job of doing the gardens in their sitting area, and he was a keen gardener, and so the manager thought he was getting a bit bored, and so she said, put him in charge of the gardens, and he was so proud of them.
It was his thing.
Yep, and all the plants were in a nice neat row, and he weeded them every day and watered them and told everyone who came along what plants were. So it's that innovation, and it's that consideration of the individual's needs that is so important. And that's
I think we're so scared we're going to lose ourselves when we get put in care. Like, those stories are brilliant, but you don't need to get lost. Like you, Janet, will not get lost.
I will just be having spicy margs up on the rooftop.
But that brings us back to the Charter of Rights, which is to have your needs met, to have a say, to live how you want to live, and to live how you used to live. And as far as possible, your rights aren't more important than someone else's, and we have to work with that as well. But meeting the needs of the older person is the key part of advocacy work. But I had now that I'm into stories, you'll get a few.
Go for it, Margaret.
Talking about people's rights, and no one person's rights are more important than the others. And we do get questions about that. I don't like the lady down the road. It's I want her moved sort of thing. Well, no, it's her room.
She likes her room.
That's parrot. And but anyhow, this an aged care, a chap in an aged care home, and he rang me up and he said, oh, yeah, they would not let me have a beer. All the aged care residents that I give examples of have the same voice, and they're all called Jack. Anyhow, Jack rang me up and he said, yeah, I'm not allowed to have a beer. Are they allowed to stop me drinking beer?
He's in the wrong aged care facility, I'm telling you.
And that's what I said to him. I said, that's not normal. A lot of aged care homes have happy hour and barbecues, and you can drink in your room if you want to. And I said to him, so are you on any medication that may prohibit you, so the staff wouldn't be allowing you to have it because it wouldn't be good for you, or are you in an aged care home where alcohol has been restricted and for religious reasons? He's going, none of that. So anyhow, I said to him, well, what would you like me to do? He said, I want you to ring the manager up and tell her to let me have a beer.
Give me a slab in here ASAP.
But anyhow, so I did that. I rang and chatted to the manager, and she said, well, in our aged care home, we have a men's shed. And she said, the men have started brewing beer. And she said, that's not the problem. She said, the problem is Jack. He's going down after breakfast and getting stuck into the beer.
Okay.
And so by lunchtime, he's rotten. And he was going back up to the aged care home. And he was being rude to the staff and he was being rude to the other residents. Okay. And so he was, outside two of the rights already. And so she said,
Jack.
Look,
Anyway,
Jack.
yes.
And she said, I've told him that he's to go down, that we recommend he goes down to the shed with the other men at 4 o'clock. They all go down for a beer before dinner. And so I got back to Jack and said, look, this is the situation. You're drinking all the profits, Jack. And Jack wasn't very happy with me. I think he thought I was just going to ring up.
You had let him down at this point.
He was just, he was just going to let me. I was just going to tell the manager to let him drink. So I had to talk to Jack about compromise and the rights of the other gentlemen who were all putting in to, brew the beer, etc., etc. So, so that's the one example of where someone's rights aren't vulnerable. But on the beer thing, I did have one manager.
Why are you looking at me when you're talking about the beer
Just
and the alcohol?
Because you mentioned cocktails.
And margaritas and whatever.
You're the only
Margaret,
person who's mentioned alcohol in this whole conversation. This was a lady who was wanting to be very isolated, and she this is how she lived in the aged care home. She drank all night and then slept all day.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, and the staff used to keep...
Medically, I'm not speaking.
No,
anyway, yes.
that's right, and medically, but it was her choice.
Yes.
And the staff used to keep her slab in the fridge, and she would wander down and get a can and wander back again, and they checked her and everything.
Okay.
There was a complaint from one of the other residents, and when I spoke to the manager, she said, well, it's her right. She has a choice about the way she lives. It's not my my thing to put my morals on her or my medical, because it was an RN, so I wouldn't do it, but that's her choice. And if she wants to die fully tanked with lovely beer, then that's her choice.
That's her right.
So,
Which
so
also brings to mind the fact that surely, as a sex therapist, I just know, in fact, my one very easy statistic I'll roll out now, 70% of 70-year-olds have sex once a week. So everyone needs to get with it, that the whole sexual arena hasn't died, surely in aged care and in other kind of areas of this. Like what sort of issues have arisen for the service in this?
I can give you a couple of examples. A manager who rang me and said, I've got 2 men in the facility, and one is identified as LGBTQI, and another was an ex-merchant seaman, is the word I'm looking for. And they formed a relationship, and the guardian of the merchant guy wanted the aged care home to stop them meeting each other, and wanted 15-minute checks on them to make sure they weren't together. And anyhow, I had a chat to them both, and the merchant guy, who was really funny, he said, I've been in the Navy a long time, and we're a bit into everything, he said, and he said, it's my choice, and anyhow, I supported the manager to tell the guardian it's not your choice, it's the choice of, and it's not us to make decisions like that. And finally, there was another one. This was in a rural area where there was a couple, and once again the manager came when I was there visiting, and the manager said to me, look, we've got a couple that formed relationships. They're not married. They've just come in, but you know, the families are happy with it, but we're a bit worried about, you know, what are our responsibilities or whatever. And they said, would you have a chat to them? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll go and have a chat. And both of them said, no, it's consenting. We really like each other. And the man said to me, don't worry, love. I said, I can't get it up anymore, so we just cuddle. And I thought, that's
spooning.
Cute. Yeah, that's cute. So, you know, and we have had family.
That actually sounds like a good sexual relationship to me.
Prescribed
in my world. In my world, that is.
We have had families who have come in and seen or saw their father holding hands with someone who's not their mother and been very upset about it. But, you know,
mind you, he's not around to protect, you know.
But he might have dementia and just have chosen the wrong person, right?
Yeah, and the families get upset because they think Dad's not being faithful, but Dad sort of can't remember who Mummy was, and it's comforting to hold someone's hand and sit together. So
or get a parrot.
Yes.
Yes.
But, you know, that whole, as advocacy services, we have to understand the rights of the older person and be sensitive to their needs and be sensitive to changes that will happen in their lives and give people the right to live the way they want to, the right to choice. That's the most important.
Gorgeous. Well, you know, not everybody in Australia speaks English and not everybody is like the same. We're a very diverse nation. So how do you sort of cater for people of a multicultural background or First Nations people or perhaps, you know, the LGBTQI plus community? Are you there to support them as well?
I think, you know, as a rights organisation, it's almost a given, isn't it, that everyone has the same rights, and those rights need to be addressed. And so, yes, we for the First Nations, there are actually home care services specifically sorted or organised for First Nations groups, for cold groups as well. But yeah, certainly our service does address all of those. We're part of the Reconciliation and Action Plan, so that's part of our day-to-day work, and it infiltrates all our policies and procedures. We certainly recognise the rights and the needs of individual groups in the LGBTQI plus sphere, and also we, you know, when we talk about translating services and things like that, they're available for our cold community because it's a very common knowledge that as you lose capacity, you lose your second language much earlier than you lose your first, and so some people who have, you know, migrated to Australia go back to their first language. That is a bit of an issue because there's not the services that we would like. It is an area that needs to be addressed where there are people who come from, doesn't matter what cultural background, that they are able to get care services in the language that they originally spoke. There are some older communities within you know, Australia that have addressed that issue, and various ethnic groups have actually got their own care services, but it needs to be really addressed because there's a whole group of recent migrants to the country that will need care in their own language at some stage. And so that's an area that we need to be working on as a community.
That's really good to know, isn't it?
It's very tricky, actually. It's going to be huge.
Gigantic.
But yeah, certainly Seniors' Rights Service does address diversity and takes it very seriously, that we do meet the needs of all the populations that come to us.
Well, Margaret, if people listening to this today are thinking, wow, this is my situation, I'm in this situation myself as a senior, or I have an elderly relative who I really want to help with getting them into sort of aged care rights, what should they do? How should they contact you?
Well, I suppose if you're just wanting information, we do have our website, which is www.seniorsrightsservice, and that will take you to our website, and there's a full list of information and printouts and information sheets, etc., and phone numbers as well. To get directly to Seniors' Rights Service, it's 1800 424 079.
Well, Margaret, we have had many fabulous senior moments here today, haven't we?
No, we haven't.
No, we have.
No
because
one's
we've been
had a senior
talking
moment.
about seniors' rights, and it has been absolutely inspirational talking to you. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but now we know what we need to know about.
Know where to go.
We know where to go
know
when
where
we
to
need to
go.
know
Yeah. There is
about
someone you
that's
can
good.
call.
Seniors' Rights Service, which is amazing. And just hearing that people, even when they just call you and they have a chat to you about these things,
To
and
a
it can
person.
be, to a real person.
To a real person,
and
no money.
you could resolve it just over the phone.
Yeah.
Is just fantastic, and someone who understands them and where they're at. So we really want to thank you for coming on She Wasn't Born Yesterday today, and we will refer you to our other friend Margaret for assistance.
Yes,
in the
you'll be
future.
hearing from
Give
her.
her the
Margaret,
Yes,
you'll be
she's
hearing
lovely.
from Margaret.
No,
Yes.
but thank you very much for the opportunity to come and talk about our service. Much appreciated.
Awesome.
A delight.
Thank you.
A delight.